What?
Something went in my ear and I stood still while you were talking, but it got me. Hey guys, welcome back to OrmsTV. Today we're out here in the beautiful Stellenbosch and we have the Sony Alpha A7C for you guys.
And we'll especially be testing this out for the vloggers and the content creators out there, pushing it to the limit, and I promise we won't forget about the photographers as well.
Yeah, so most of this video we're literally going to be doing as if it's a vlog, and we're going to kick it off with specs. Let's go. And we have
Okay guys, so before we get into the specs of the camera, let's talk about what equipment we're using on here.
Yeah, so obviously we are actually filming on the Sony Alpha A7C, so it's a brand new release from Sony, and this is kind of the best way to test it. Then coupled with that, we have Sony's 16-35 f2.8 G Master lens. Now, yes, that is a little bit overkill for vlogging, but hey, you know, we work at ORMS, we have access to it, so we figured we might as well use it.
And then as for audio, we've got the Rode Video Micro, quite a little popular mic. It actually comes with a little dead cat as well. And then the obvious, very popular Joby 3K tripod.
Absolutely, pretty much a very standard vlogging setup for anybody getting going. Yeah. Except for the lens, of course, that's a little bit high end. But there's other lenses that are very similar that one could use.
I can't see if it's recording.
I also can't see anything.
Okay.
Is it recording?
Yeah.
Great. Now in terms of the specs, this is actually very standard fare and will be very familiar to current Sony users. So for the sensor, you have Sony's very familiar 24 megapixel backside illuminated sensor, and it's the same sensor that you find in the A7 III. Coupled with that, you have 4K video at a maximum frame rate of 30 frames per second. Very standard, very reliable.
Also, you have 5-axis in-body stabilization, and we all know Sony does very well with this. Autofocus, you've got just over 600 phaser tech autofocus points, and another great feature over the A7 III is the human and animal continuous autofocus in video mode.
Very nice, very stable, and again, like a very reliable system to use. I can't see.
Okay, yeah, that's record. Alright guys, so we've been shooting with this camera the whole day, and we're kind of getting to that point where we talk about what we like and what we don't like about the camera. Now specifically, I'm going to focus on the photographic side of things. So on this, you do get the 24 megapixel sensor from Sony, and that is giving you very good high resolution images. So even though Sony is kind of aiming this at the video side and content creators, you still get 24 megapixels, which is great. Other thing is, you do get a 10 frames per second. Now this is still capable of shooting wildlife and sport. So when it comes to the camera side of things, you've got some really good reliable features. Good autofocus for both human and animals. So as a photo side, great. Stuff that I'm not too happy about, and that's going to be more from the ergonomic side of things. So if you're a photographer, the viewfinder is definitely not going to be up to par. It is really small, and even when you look through it, it's sometimes difficult to read some of the specs. Another feature I don't like is they've removed a joystick. So we've come to the norm of having joysticks on cameras, and unfortunately you still have to use the up, down, left and right D-pad to move your autofocus points. It just makes it a little bit slower. Another thing is, from a professional photographic point of view, you're only getting one SD card slot. So if you are a professional and you do shoot backup, that is kind of a problem. Also, Sony kind of marketed this camera as the world's smallest full frame, and the problem for a photographer is maybe on the grip side of things. It might not be the best if you've got bigger hands, but this is kind of where they wanted to aim it for, is a smaller full frame machine. So that's my thoughts on the camera. That's kind of like the pros and the cons on the photographic side of things. Let's head over to Deon, and he's going to run down some of the video. Alright, so
now in terms of the video specs, the camera really is everything that you would expect from Sony at this stage in the game. We have 4K video, we have 30 frames per second, we have Sony's very good XAVC file format. The camera even has S-Log and S-Log 3 for a little bit more serious video production. And this is all really good. It is exactly what you want from a camera like this. In addition to that, you have Sony's very robust and very reliable face and eye detect autofocus system, and it works when you're shooting video. It tracks continuously, and man, it works fantastically, especially in this type of setup, this orientation where you're vlogging. Now, in addition to that, the camera also has a flip-out LCD screen. Even though other manufacturers have been doing it for a while, it's relatively new for Sony. And the only other Sony camera with this functionality is the A7S III. It's a very encouraging move to see, and I really like it. Now, unfortunately, there are some negatives in this camera, and a lot of it has to do with how their system is set up here. First things first, even though this camera came out after the A7S III, it actually doesn't have the new menu system. So you're still stuck with the old menu system where you're scrolling for hours and hours to get to any of the functions that you're actually looking for. Now, in addition to using the older menu system, the camera also uses the older touchscreen functionality, which means that I can't actually access the menu and work that with the touchscreen, which is unfortunate because for a camera that is aimed to be used in this type of orientation, there is no way for me to quickly access the menu right here. I have to turn the camera around, flip the screen back, and then access it through the traditional menu. The other thing that I want to say about this flip-out LCD screen is that unfortunately it's not a very high resolution screen, and I really wanted something a little bit more. If you look at some of the other functions on the camera though, it does have a headphone jack, and that's great for audio monitoring. And something that we found today is it's actually quite essential because the camera's built-in speaker is actually really soft and you really struggle to hear it. And if you're someone who's vlogging, content creating, anything like that, trust me, you're gonna love that headphone jack when it comes to reviewing your footage. The stabilizer that's built into the unit works decently well, but we have seen recently that Sony's in-body stabilization does fall a little bit behind some of the competition. Now, unfortunately, the lens that I'm using right now does not have stabilization in it, and that is something to consider. If you are going to pick up one of these units, maybe couple it with a lens that does have stabilization built into the lens as well, so that your in-body stabilization and your lens stabilization can work in conjunction with each other. Okay, now I'm going to mention two more negatives here, and one of them is that there's no real custom buttons on this camera. If you're going to be shooting quite a bit of video, that's unfortunate because you really want to have some more custom buttons, custom functionality in there. The other thing to mention is that, and I think this is just a firmware issue and I'm sure Sony can fix it quite easily, is that if you're switching between stills mode and video mode, it doesn't save your settings separately. So the moment I switch over into stills and I change my settings, when I switch back, it saves the settings from stills. And you know, I really don't like that. A big pro for this type of application that you see me using right now is the size of this camera. And maybe not so much the size, but very much the weight. Now, this camera is smaller than the A7 III on which it's very much based, but it is quite a bit lighter. And I really like that. That's really positive and great for this sort of application where you're walking, you're talking to the camera, you're showing people what the beautiful world looks like. To make a camera this size, that's full frame, well done Sony. I really like it. Your owns did a good job. But in terms of the size, if you are more serious into video production, then the size might be a bit of a problem. For that type of application, maybe you want something that's a little bit bigger, a little bit more robust, so just keep that in mind. But all in all, it is very clear that this unit is much more based around video capture, and specifically this type of video capture, the vlogging environment, than it is necessarily for stills. And I think that holds it back a little bit from being a true all-rounder. You're gonna have a ton of shots of us going like this. Yeah.
Right, Deon. So we've been shooting with this all day. What is our conclusion on this camera and where is it aimed at?
So I think this camera has made one thing abundantly clear throughout this entire day, and that is that Sony created a unit that is so clearly and so definitively aimed at the vlogging, traveling, content producing community. That really is the niche that I want to recommend this camera for.
Yes, from the photography side of things, we've seen some drawbacks, especially on the body and ergonomics. So for a professional photographer, this might not be the unit for you. The A7 III will definitely be better suited for that.
Yeah, I think that this camera fills a very specific niche gap. I think that if you come into Sony's lineup and you are, as you said, a professional photographer, there's other units to look at. If you're a very serious video creator, there's other units to look at. They do the A7S series. But if you come into Sony's lineup and you are looking for a camera that gives you the functionality and the quality of full frame, which admittedly is very hard to find at this type of price point, and you want the video features that this unit offers, then I think this is absolutely perfect specifically for that niche. But that does bring us to another point in this conclusion, and it's the same point to an extent that we had in our previous review of the Nikon Z5, and that is that in 2020 Sony has produced a very good, very capable camera aimed at a very specific segment of the market. And my question again is that enough? Is it good enough to stand apart, to be a unit in its own right? And that is the question that we need to answer here.
As an all-round professional system, I would say no. There's definitely some flaws, especially on the photo side of things and the body side of things, but for specific full-frame vlogging, content creation, even if you're doing photography as a secondary, this would be the perfect system for you. But if you're purely needing it for professional cinematography or professional photography even, there's definitely some other camera solutions out there that will suit you better.
Is Jess in the frame? Probably. The Sony A7C.
Leave any questions or comments in the comments below. And also consider subscribing. I mean, yeah, I must say. Hope you enjoyed it. See you guys. Take two.
Take two. So guys, that was our video review on the Sony A7C, literally shot on the Sony A7C, and I really hope you guys enjoyed it.
Yeah, and as always, any questions, leave them in the comments below. We do respond to them, and always consider subscribing.
Cheers guys.
See you.